I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out righteousness. So Solomon writes in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 11, "My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, and neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth." And so it's very important that we understand that we've grown up over the past 50 years in particular, and over the last 70 years in general, loathing the idea of correction. Most of us have grown up under the influence of perhaps one of the most prolific pediatricians that the world has ever known, a pediatrician by the name of Dr. Spock. And Dr. Spock wrote a book about caring and loving for your children back in 1946. It was a phenomenal book that changed the whole idea from biblical parenting to social left-wing liberal parenting. Dr. Spock, a very, very well-known pediatrician, died in 1998, but he changed the world. Up until Dr. Spock, who wrote that book in 1946, and then it became very popular in the 60s and 70s, children were raised under the biblical principle, spare the rod, spoil the child. Dr. Spock trashed that, burned that verse, burned the Bible, and said we need to be more loving towards our children and not abusive. That's what he called that type of teaching, abusive to your children. The most famous book of the 20th century, Dr. Spock's book. And in that book, he focused more on the nurturing aspect of mothers and disenfranchised fathers, because he proposed that fathers were more abusive, they were more aggressive, they were more, if you will, threatening towards children. So the mother should have the whole the parenting structure. It was that. But the theme of Dr. Spock was the Bible's legal teaching about stoning a child, about putting a rod on a child, about correcting a child was abusive, and it should not be followed. And actually, he probably sold more books than the Bible during a specific period of time, and it changed the world. It changed America. So what we see now with school shootings, what we see now with the liberal leftist liberals, politicians, what we see with the LGBTQ aspect, what we see going on here is all can be attributed to Dr. Spock. What we see what's going on with Obama and his promotion of same-sex marriages. But the thing that perhaps will grip you most is the fact the school shootings, or the, if you will, mass shootings, I should say. That's all Dr. Spock, who said, don't use discipline upon your children. Don't use a rod. Be nurturing. Give them the liberty and the freedom to explore themselves. There's some houses now where children curse more than sailors. I mean, cursing at their parents, and it's accepted. All that goes back to Dr. Spock. And a lot of people raising children today have no idea, because they themselves were raised by the products of the teachings of Dr. Spock. The grandparents were raised, many children now, grandparents were raised by the teachings of Dr. Spock. And so the children have no idea what a true childhood is like. They have no idea. Train a child in the way that they should go, and when they get older, they will not go into a school and shoot it up, or into a Walmart and shoot it up, or to a Club Q. Well, anyway, here, so people are ignorant of the history of violence. They're ignorant of the history of the vicious attack that Dr. Spock leveled against the Bible. And the church has adopted it as well, because mothers, women are very important to the churches. So this whole idea of chastising all of us, like, for instance, right now, a lot of people in the LGBTQ are calling persons like myself hate preachers, because we preach the word of God. You can see now how that gets generated. I'm not a hate preacher, but they begin to pick up mottos that they're hurled back at. Where they get this hate preacher? They got it from Dr. Spock. Dr. Spock says it ought to be about loving and nurturing, and not about a chastening and putting a rod on the back of a child. So then they pick up a lingo, and they pick up if you will, a theology of their own. He's a hate preacher. He's a hater. He's a mean-spirited person. It's just Bible. But it is not me they're condemning, it's the Bible they're condemning. But they're paying, they're sowing to the wind, and they're reaping to the whirlwind. And you're going to see more shootings. You're going to see shootings over the Thanksgiving weekend. You're going to see more mass shootings, because that is what has now been unleashed upon us through nearly 70 years of this influence of Dr. Spock and his teachings, where the Bible is now condemned as a hate book. The teachings of the Bible condemned as hate speech. And loving and nurturing and exploring your life and letting children explore themselves is the order of the day. Well, not here. Not here in our ministry. Not at all. Not at all. But the thing I'm trying to say, I think most profoundly, is people don't even know why. They don't even know why. And they're talking about, well, you got to try to tamp down on the NRA. Tamping down on the NRA is not going to stop the school shooting. They're going there with knives. I understand that the killing that took place up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, was all a knife stabbing. 4 people were killed inside their beds while they were sleeping. No guns were used. So don't be going after the NRA. They're not the problem. The problem is the parents, Dr. Spock. The problem are the churches. That's the problem. You can ban NRA all you want. You can talk about them. And the other thing, don't go for the politicians, because most of these politicians have been raised up with this laissez-faire, liberal leftist idea of Dr. Spock, of love and nurturing rather than the law of God that Moses gave and that Solomon teaches us. They've thrown the Bible out the door. So what do you expect going to happen? And now they're being able to garner through the power of the media, through the power of the politicians, universities, they've been able to ostracize persons such as myself, and you let them do it. You don't help me get my voice out even further. But these shootings are going to continue. So what we're witnessing now can be traced back to Dr. Spock. I want to take you, forget about Dr. Spock, I want to take you in the University of Solomon, Solomon's university teaching, I want to take you back to Solomon, who says, my son, forget not the law. Dr. Spock said, forget the law. Solomon says, don't forget the law. Solomon says, if you don't forget the law, you have long life, you'll have peace in the schools. There'll be peace at Walmart. There'll be peace at the supermarkets. There'll be peace in the church if you don't forget the law. But if you follow Dr. Spock, you're not going to have peace. Your lives are going to be cut short at 8, 9 years old. You're not going to have prosperity. You're not going to be blessed. You're going to have chaos. But that's what Dr. Spock has wreaked upon America, and not so much upon Europe, but upon America. So it is important for us to know these historical facts and teaching. So I told you, you're in a university. You're in Solomon's University. I'm Professor Manning, and you're learning about economics. You're learning about social sciences, history. You're learning about philosophy. You're learning about medicine. You're learning about law at Solomon's University. And so, again, if you can't take your child or grandchild out of the public school system, you just can't do it. Help me get my voice out where more structure can be taught and the paradigm and example that I have set can be followed, and help me turn around this whole idea of what Dr. Spock has infested the American society with. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant.